Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar covering basic HTML elements and CSS properties. The goal for today is for you to understand the basics of HTML and CSS so that you can further expand your knowledge of website development, planning, and building a full responsive website using HTML and CSS. So let's get right into it. Let's understand the basics of HTML. Well, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Tim Berners-Lee created it in 1993. A markup language refers to a text encoding system consisting of a set of symbols inserted in a text document to control the structure, formatting, and the relationship between the parts. It was created to define the structure of web pages. A web page is a simple document that can be displayed by a web browser like Chrome, Firefox, Opera, and Safari, to mention but a few. HTML helps to organize texts, videos, and many more. In short, it's a must to learn HTML if you want to develop your own websites. So here we see the basics of an HTML document. This structure shows HTML elements, and one would wonder and ask, what is an HTML element? Well, an HTML element is everything from the start tag to the end tag. Understanding the elements from the HTML document structure above, you initially get the doc type, which is the declaration that tells the browser that a given file is the HTML5 markup file. Thereafter, you get the HTML element, and this is the root element of an HTML page. You then get the head element, which contains the meta information about the HTML page. Then you get the title, an element that basically displays the title of an HTML page in the title bar of a web browser. Then you get the body element, which defines the document's body and contains all of the information that is visible to the end user, like headings, paragraphs, images, hyperlinks, and many more. You then get the H1 elements, which define the large heading, and finally the P element, which defines a paragraph. Well, let's have a look at some more HTML elements. You also get the meta, which defines the metadata about an HTML document. Metadata is essentially data about data. Often here you'll also find the meta tags, which a search engine would basically use in order to decide and categorize a website so that if one were to search it using a search engine, they'd be able to find it using the meta tags. You then get the section, which defines the section of an HTML document. The header represents a container for introductory content or a set of navigation links. Typically, element headers contains one or more heading elements, the logo or icon, and auto ship information. The A defines a hyperlink, which is used to link from one page to another. You then get the div, which defines divisions or sections of an HTML document. It's a container for the HTML elements, which is styled with CSS or manipulated with JavaScript. It's easily styled using the class or ID attribute. The link defines the relationship between the current and external resource. It is essentially empty and contains attributes only. The label attribute label must be equal to the ID attribute of the related elements to bind them together. It can also be bound to an element by placing the element inside the label element. Span, in HTML, the span element is an inline element that is used to apply styles to small blocks of content within a larger block of text. It's generally used to apply styles to specific words or phrases within a paragraph. Let's take a look at some CSS basics. So CSS, or cascading style sheets, is a language that describes the presentation of HTML elements. It allows you to control the layout and styling of multiple web pages at once, saving both time and effort. Let us have a look at the different CSS properties. We will be publishing an appendix with all of the terms we're discussing today, as well as the explanations after the webinar. So let's have a look at some CSS properties. Firstly, you get the display. This property specifies the display behavior of an element. Flex direction specifies the direction of the flexible items, but if an element is not a flexible item, the flex direction property has no effect. Justify content aligns the flexible containers items when the items do not use all available space on the main axis horizontally. The background sets different background properties in one declaration. Background position sets the starting position of a background image. Top sets the top edge of the positioned div element 50 pixels down from the top edge of its nearest positioned ancestor. Align contents modifies the behavior of the flex wrap property. It's similar to an align items, but instead of aligning flex item, it aligns flex lines. Color specifies the color of the text. Font size sets the size of the font. Text decoration specifies the decoration added to the text and is a shorthand property for text decoration. Text decoration style, text decoration thickness, and so forth. Text transform property. This property controls the capitalization of text. Font weight sets how thick or thin characteristics in text should be displayed. Letter spacing increases or decreases the space between characters in a text. Border radius defines the radius of an element's corners. Margin right sets the margin of an element. A not, or last child, is used to add content after every child element except the last. A hover specifies what happens when you hover a mouse on an element. Transition is a shorthand property for transition property, transition duration, transition timing function, and transition delay. Max width defines the maximum width of an element. Line height specifies the height of the element. Margin bottom sets the bottom margin of an element. Column span specifies how many columns an element span crosses. Text spacing increases or decreases the spaces between letters in a text. Transform applies a 2D or 3D transformation to an element. This property allows you to rotate, scale, move, and skew your element. Z-index specifies the stack order of an element. At media, this is a rule that is used to check many things. For instance, the width and height of the environment, the width and height of the device, the orientation is the tablet, phone in landscape or portrait mode, and then finally the resolution as well. Cursor specifies the mouse cursor to be displayed when pointing over an element. Hover specifies what should happen when you hover a mouse on an element. Position specifies the type of positioning method used for an element, be it static, relative, absolute, fixed, or sticky. Margin sets the margins for an element and is a shorthand for the following properties: margin top, margin right, margin bottom, margin left. Padding is a shorthand property for padding top, padding right, padding bottom, and padding left. Box sizing defines how the width and height of an element is calculated, should they include padding and borders or not. Font family specifies the fonts of an element. Width sets the width of an element. Min height minimizes the height of an element. Let us now take a look at some class selectors, right? So in CSS, a class selector is used to apply styles to elements that have a specific class attribute. class selectors are denoted by a period followed by the name of the class. For example, let's say you have an HTML element with a class attribute value of warning. You can use a class selector to apply styles to this element as follows. You period warning. The color is then defined as red, the font weight as bold. This will make the text inside the div element red and bold because it has the warning class. You can also use class selectors to apply styles to multiple elements at once. For example, if we have a look here, you can see the class's warning. And when this is displayed, you then have the following styles applied to it, where the color is defined as red, and again, the font is weight, and this is applied across both elements. So both P elements will have red bold text because they both have the warning class. All right. So next, let's have a look at the CSS ID selector. The ID selector styles the elements with the specific ID. CSS sign, it will select all elements that are preceded by former selector. For example, here we have the div container. The div sign is then applied for the background color will be changed to blue. In the example below, it'll target both second and third. After learning and understanding the above information, it's now time to learn from step by step how to plan and develop your own first responsive website using HTML and CSS. In our next webinar, Emmanuel will be showing you how to take these elements and properties and use them to create a professional portfolio website. We do have resources available that expand on each of the properties we've discussed today. If you are looking to download them, please get in touch with us. All right. Thank you for attending, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.